So we talked last week, or a couple weeks ago actually, about some of the Biden proposals to shore up Social Security. Chief among them is this notion of starting to apply the Social Security tax at incomes above 400,000. Right now, you only pay Social Security tax on incomes up to around 140 odd thousand, and then once you're past that, then there's no more payment into the Social Security system. So one of the proposals that's been floating around is, well, that's fine, we'll keep that, but once you sort of come back around and go above a higher level of income, and the number that's been tossed around is 400,000. And remember that's work income in a particular year. So it's not like looking at assets or total income. That is work income in a particular year. To then have that amount above that, have those Social Security taxes reapply. And the reason we say it's 12.4% is there's two parts of it, right? There's the part that you pay, 6.2, and then the part that the employer pays. So that's kind of one of the main proposals in terms of how to shore it up. But there's also a number of proposals to sort of improve the benefits and deal with the fact that many Americans rely, unfortunately, solely on Social Security. And then number two, many Americans also are living much, much longer. And so we wanted to kind of get some of these suggestions in terms of proposed changes to the benefits on the table, so you can kind of be thinking about them and not be surprised when in fact they actually do occur. So welcome back to Dollars and Cents, where we help you make sense out of all of life's decisions involving your dollars. We're Central Florida's longest running radio program, coming to you here on the News Radio WFLA Orlando network, along with 96.9 The Game. Coming up next week, speaking of 96.9 The Game, right? The Bucks in the Super Bowl. Who would have believed it? It should be very exciting. Although if you're trying to go in person, you're going to have a serious hit to your wallet. The prices are outrageous for Super Bowl tickets, but you can watch it from the comfort of your home or listen to it on 96.9 The Game. So there you go. There's your option for next Sunday. Our program also happens to be one of the top 25 financial planning podcasts on the World Wide Web. Last count, I think 14,000 downloads, something like that. So make sure you check us out there. My name, of course, Joel Garris. I'm a certified financial planner, certified financial fiduciary with Nelson Financial Planning, where our team of certified financial fiduciary stands ready this week to help you change your life with a successful and cost-effective retirement plan that produces superior investment results and provides you with peace of mind for the future. So here's the background, right? We're in the middle of a pandemic, but before that, if we can kind of imagine the world before that for just a second, all of 11 months ago, 12 months ago, Social Security was already in trouble financially. And so the projections were that by the year 2035, and this is where the media does a good job at sort of misdescribing what's going to happen. They talk about in the year 2035, Social Security becoming bankrupt, if you will. And that's not quite the case. All it really means is that Social Security is not going to be bringing in enough money to cover the benefits that are going out. And at that point, it would have to reduce benefits by about 20%. So clearly a situation that nobody wants to have happen, but just understand that it's not like Social Security is going to go to zero when you hear these reports of in 2035. It's going to wind up running into financial difficulties. It's not going to just disappear. The proposal that we were talking about earlier in this segment about starting to kick in the Social Security tax for incomes above 400,000, that would extend out that 2035 date to 2040. The reality is that all of these dates were sort of pre-pandemic, and so now in the middle of a pandemic, you've got a lot less employment than what you had, so you may see those dates sort of shuffle. But the flip side of that, in contrast to sort of the proposals to kind of shore up the revenue side, there's also a variety of proposals that are on the table that could improve your benefits, especially for those Americans that unfortunately rely solely or heavily on Social Security in retirement. So in this segment, we're going to kind of dig into some of the proposals and at least kind of put them on the table so you sort of know what to look for in the months ahead as to whether these might actually become reality. And again, the core of these proposals is to kind of deal with the retirement crisis that we have in America, where not enough people have saved enough for retirement, along with the longevity crisis. It's not really a crisis if you're living longer, because it's good to live longer, but the reality is that it does put a financial strain on your ability to be able to kind of meet your expenses along the way, particularly in those later years. So one of the proposals, which actually kind of deals with sort of the gender gap, this notion that women typically miss years in the workforce, whether it's to have kids or to care for parents. Oftentimes you'll see women more than men kind of moving in and out of the workforce. Well, what that means is then that they've got less time in the workforce to ultimately accrue money for retirement. So one of the proposals is to sort of start to give a caregiver credit, if you will, for time spent out of the workforce, taking care of kids, taking care of parents, things like that. So that would certainly help to bridge one sort of shortfall when it comes to Social Security, and a shortfall that exists out there in America as a whole, which is, again, you kind of got this gender gap. Another proposal, and this one I think is something that we'll see folks get behind, is this notion of the cost of living adjustment, right? So the cost of living adjustment today sort of looks at the cost of inflation for all Americans and then adjusts it accordingly. But the reality is, if you're over 65, your inflation and how you spend money is different than the person who is 25. At 65, you're going to spend more on things like healthcare costs than the 25-year-old. And the reality is that the increase in healthcare costs over the course of the past 30, 40 years has been at a much higher rate than, say, the costs of clothes or something like that, or electronics, that a 25-year-old might spend more money on. So understand that there's a disproportionate impact of inflation on seniors because they happen to use the services in those sectors where you've seen the biggest increase in terms of cost, specifically, of course, healthcare. Another option is sort of to improve the survivor benefits. Right now, if there's a couple, right, and both are bringing in Social Security, when one passes, one of those incomes is going to go away, is going to disappear. And so what happens is, let's say the spouse one spouse is making $1,500 a month in Social Security and the other's making $1,000 a month. One of them dies, the $1,000 a month is going to go away, and only the $1,500 is going to be coming in at that point. It doesn't matter who dies first or whatever. There's always kind of that step up in terms to that higher amount, but that means that the lower amount disappears. So so that would, in a lot of cases, that can be close to a 50% reduction in terms of income when a spouse passes. So one of the proposals is to have survivors get the option to receive sort of a 75% of total household Social Security benefits. So you may see that expansion of benefits. That would certainly help folks that lose a spouse and then also lose up to a 50% reduction in income. Again, these are going to be very heavily means tested. These are going to be, require a full look at finances, and I think we'll see a lot of these changes only applying to folks that truly sort of need that income to continue on. And then lastly, one of the other proposals, which is kind of interesting, is a bit of a Social Security longevity bonus, right? One of the issues is that people are living longer, and ultimately that puts a greater strain on finances to last for a longer period of time. So one of the proposals is that if you've been collecting Social Security for 20 years, you're going to start to get an extra 5% of the average benefit to sort of help those folks that are still collecting Social Security and getting up in age. That was the proposal, is to phase that in at 1% per year of a boost starting at about 16 years. So some interesting proposals here that really try to tackle the gender gap that exists when it comes to retirement planning, the retirement planning gap just in general, because people haven't saved as much as they should, and then the longevity gap as well. So interesting to see how many of these proposals actually come to pass. We think certainly when you have this many proposals, not all of them are going to come to pass, but certainly a few of them might. So important to kind of get those on your radar, and as always, on the program, we'll keep you informed of those changes as they actually become law. So with that, we'll take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about market indices and which one you should be following to really get a gauge for your portfolio. Coming up next here on Dollars and Cents with Joel Garris of Nelson Financial Planning on News Radio WFLA Orlando.